There is a corner at a racetrack in southern Spain that nobody remembers. It doesn't have a name that fans recite like Eau Rouge or Rédillon. It's not Monaco's tunnel or Silverstone's maggots. It's just a corner, a medium-speed right-hander at a circuit called Jerez. But on a Sunday afternoon in October 1997, that corner became the most important piece of asphalt in the history of Formula One. Because on that corner, the most famous racing driver in the world made a decision, a deliberate, calculated, ruthless decision, one that took less than a second to execute. And for years after, one question followed that decision everywhere it went. Did Michael Schumacher ever truly admit what he did? By the end of this story, you'll have your answer. This is the day Michael Schumacher crossed the line, and the price he paid for it. To understand what happened at Jerez, you have to understand who Michael Schumacher was in 1997. Not the legend, not the seven-time world champion history remembers. The Schumacher of 1997 was hungry, deeply, uncomfortably hungry. He had already won 2 world championships, 1994 and 1995 with Benetton. By most standards, that should have been enough to feel secure, but Michael Schumacher was not built for enough. In 1996, he made the move that defined his legacy, signing for Ferrari, the most iconic team in Formula One, also the most broken. Ferrari hadn't won a Constructors' Championship since 1983, 13 years of failure, politics, and heartbreak, and now they were betting everything on one German driver to fix it. He finished 3rd in his first Ferrari season. Respectable, but not a championship. And for Schumacher, anything short of a championship was failure. By 1997, Ferrari had improved. He had improved. The hunger was sharper than ever. But standing between him and the title was a young Canadian driver named Jacques Villeneuve, racing for Williams-Renault. Jacques Villeneuve, son of the legendary Gilles Villeneuve, perhaps the most beloved Ferrari driver who ever lived. A man whose loss the entire motorsport world still feels. It was almost poetic, the son of Ferrari's greatest hero, racing against Ferrari's greatest hope. Keep that name, Gilles Villeneuve, in your mind. His shadow over this story runs deeper than you might think. But sentiment meant nothing. This was a championship, and going into the final race of the 1997 season, the European Grand Prix at Jerez, Spain, Schumacher led Villeneuve by exactly 1 point, 78 to 77. One race, 1 point, everything on the line. The morning of October 26, 1997, carried the kind of tension that only a winner-takes-all finale can produce. The Jerez circuit was packed. Every team principal, every engineer, every journalist in Formula One knew they were about to witness history. They just didn't know what kind. Villeneuve claimed pole position. Schumacher lined up alongside him on the front row. The 2 men who would decide the championship would start the race inches apart. The opening laps were a chess match. Both drivers controlled, both calculating, neither willing to make the mistake that would cost them everything. But by lap 40, something had to give. Villeneuve couldn't afford to simply follow Schumacher home. The points gap meant he needed to finish ahead. He needed to attack. The question wasn't whether he would make a move. The question was when. On lap 48 of 69, he found his moment. Heading into the right-hand corner at the back of the circuit, Villeneuve moved to the inside of Schumacher's Ferrari. It was a legitimate attempt. Brave, committed. He had the speed. He had the line. He had earned the corner. Schumacher saw him coming. And here is where the story changes forever. Instead of defending cleanly, instead of accepting that Villeneuve had the position, Schumacher turned his Ferrari directly into the side of Villeneuve's Williams. The contact was immediate and violent. Schumacher's car was launched sideways into the gravel trap, beached, finished. The man who had carried Ferrari's hopes for 2 years, who had calculated every move of an entire season, who was laps away from a 3rd world championship, was sitting helpless in a gravel trap, watching it all collapse. But here is what Schumacher had not counted on. Villeneuve kept going. The left front suspension of the Williams was damaged. The car was compromised. Every instinct said it should have been over. But Jacques Villeneuve, son of the greatest Ferrari driver who ever lived, drove that broken, damaged car across the finish line. Third place, 4 points. Villeneuve, 81. Schumacher, 78. World champion, Jacques Villeneuve. In the minutes after the race, the paddock moved through shock and near silence. This had not been a racing incident. This had not been a misjudgment under pressure. The replays were already playing on screens across the world, frame by frame. The turn of the wheel, the deliberate movement into Villeneuve's car. Everyone saw it. Nobody could explain it away. In the media pen, Villeneuve was composed but direct. "He just turned into me," he said. Schumacher attempted to frame it as a racing incident. His words were measured, careful, but the footage contradicted everything he said. The FIA launched an immediate investigation. The sport held its breath. What happened next had never happened in the history of Formula One. The FIA World Motorsport Council convened in November 1997. They reviewed the footage, the telemetry, the witness accounts, and they delivered a verdict that had no precedent in the sport's nearly 50-year history. Michael Schumacher was excluded from the 1997 World Drivers' Championship, not disqualified from one race, not handed a points deduction, excluded from the entire season. His 5 race wins remained on record. His 78 points remained visible. But his championship standing, his position, his place in the final table, was gone, removed entirely. No second place, no ranking, just 3 letters next to his name, DSQ. Frentzen moved to second. Schumacher moved to nowhere. For a man who defined himself by where he finished, there was no crueler punishment. And now, remember Gilles Villeneuve, Ferrari's greatest hero. He died in 1982 at the Circuit des Zolder in Belgium, taken too soon, before his time. His son Jacques grew up carrying that legacy, and on October 26, 1997, that same son drove a broken car across a finish line to defeat the team his father loved most. That detail is not a footnote. That is everything. But here is what makes the story of Jerez 1997 impossible to reduce to a simple verdict of right and wrong. Because if you know what came next, you know this was not the end of Michael Schumacher. He came back in 1998, still hungry, still ruthless, but with something to prove that no championship could fully measure. In 1999, Ferrari ended 16 years without a Constructors' Championship, though the driver's title slipped away. In 2000, Schumacher took that too, ending Ferrari's 21-year wait for a Drivers' World Championship. The last man to do it had been Jody Scheckter in 1979, and he wasn't done. 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 5 consecutive World Championships, the most dominant era in the sport's history. The man who was disgraced at Jerez became, undeniably, the greatest Formula One driver of his generation. And then, years later, when the world had moved on, when the trophies had been won and the records had been broken, someone asked Michael Schumacher a simple question. Did he have any regrets from his Formula One career? A career spanning 7 world championships, 91 race victories, numbers that at the time seemed untouchable, and for decades they were. He paused, and then he said, "If there were a situation in my career which I could undo, it would be this. Not a crash, not a retirement, not a lost championship. Jerez. That one corner, that 1 second, that one turn of the wheel. The admission the world had waited years to hear. Quiet, simple, and more powerful than anything he could have said in 1997. Michael Schumacher crossed a line at Jerez in 1997, But he was not the first driver in Formula One to make a decision in the heat of battle that shocked the world, and he was not the last. There are stories in this sport that will make you question everything you thought you knew about racing, about the people who drive these machines, about the decisions made in split seconds, that echo for decades. Those stories are coming. Subscribe to Grand Prix Untold so you don't miss a single one.